Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. My friends, World War III is in full swing and we need to talk about a lot of things today. We need to dispel some myths. We need to share some insights with you that I guarantee you are absolutely not going to hear anywhere else. Now, I want to thank people for all of the very positive comments that we received on the family outing video that we did yesterday. About 1% of the comments, however, were saying things like, well, it's about time you finally went out there and tested your gear. Guys, we've been running this channel for 7 or 8 years now. We've been prepping and doing the survival stuff for more than a decade. We've been out there doing that stuff for a long time. Unfortunately, and this is part of the reason why a lot of people aren't going to survive when it all hits the fan, is that more people are concerned with titillating their adrenal glands by hearing bad news whilst not pairing it with some applied survival methodology. You got to be out there training, learning the skills, doing the stuff. We do that stuff all the time. We just don't broadcast it because, quite frankly, most people don't care, which is why I was very surprised by the reception of that video yesterday. So maybe people want to see more of that stuff. We'll make more of that stuff. I'm perfectly okay with that. But guys, we need to get into stuff that's going on today. Now, I know Tucker Carlson said, Joe Biden said, we're going to blow up the pipeline. Actually, no, he didn't. I understand that, and something people need to maybe be mindful of, is if everybody starts screaming in unison that something has to be the case, it may very well be. But it's good to just slow down. Just take a step back, just slow down, because that's what lemmings do. Okay, they run themselves off of the cliff as they overpopulate. Guys, I'm just saying, slow down. We need to do a bit more investigation here. There's a lot of unanswered questions and there's a lot of funny stuff. So I'm going to try to break it all down. And the reason why we're talking about this Nord Stream pipe issue, if you don't understand, this is the first attack outside of Ukrainian or Russian soil. It is very substantial because this is the first attack. You could call it a terrorist attack. You can call it whatever you want, but it's the war going outside of the borders of Ukraine for the first time. And this is a very ominous sign that things are going to get very bad. This, they're saying, German engineers are saying that it's likely that that pipeline is now done. It's finished because the seawater is going to seep into the pipeline and likely cause corrosion issues if they can't bottle it up fast enough. And they're saying that it's easily going to be 5 to 6 months. So we're looking at over winter, at least, in the very least. Now, 30% of the gas that gets sent to Europe also comes through Ukraine. And of course, that is at risk of being shut down due to some sort of legal spat, not counting the fact that there's a major war which is likely to escalate in the coming weeks ahead and over the winter time there. So this is terminal for the European economy. Definitely, even if there's enough natural gas to keep residents living in a relative state of comfort, the industry is going to be all but shut down. Now, people are talking about this new Baltic pipeline that is going from Norway to Poland, thinking that this is going to be some kind of replacement. Nothing can replace the Gazprom. Okay, these pipelines were massive. We're talking about, I think it was 55 billion, I'm not sure if it's barrels or cubic feet per year, just from the one pipeline. I think combined, all told, it's like 80 billion cubic feet per year, potentially. This new pipeline from Poland is about 5% of the capacity of that. So in no way, shape, or form is it going to, it unto itself, at least, is going to be a replacement for Gazprom and Russian natural gas and LNG and any other way that they're planning on supplementing their energy needs. Now, in terms of who is responsible for this, this is where it gets very interesting. Did you guys know, and I could probably just do a whole video just on this one particular issue, back in the 80s, in 1982, in fact, while the Soviets and the Americans were fighting with one another. Well, this was kind of the dawn of the age of hacking. And the Soviets were actually burned by CIA hackers at the time. Hackers in the purest sense. Hacking doesn't just mean doing things over the internet. It emerged through doing things with the phone lines and stuff like that. But what they did is that the Soviets were in the business of trying to steal chips because the Americans were more advanced at the time in terms of their microchip technology. So the Soviets stole these chips that they wanted to use to regulate their own natural gas pipeline network. And the CIA knew this. So somehow they convinced the Soviets to steal a chip that had a Trojan horse on it. And what this Trojan horse did is that every microchip that they stole, it would run fine for several million cycles. And then it would go into some other kind of war mode, okay? And so the Trojan horse was programmed to let it run smooth, so they didn't suspect anything for about 4 to 5 months. And then the pumps and compressors were given a signal to do a pressure test at a significantly increased pressure. This, of course, caused major pipeline explosion. One for the record burst. The Air Force thought it was a 3-kiloton blast. Okay? The welds blew apart. It was a huge explosion. So, the reason why I'm so suspicious about people saying, immediately when this story broke, people were talking about, it has to be explosives. It had to be a submarine. It had to be Spetsnaz or Navy SEALs or something like that. Well, when they start to frame it like that, when they start to prime people with that, and I say they, who's they? I mean, I'm not necessarily implying that there's a grand conspiracy or anything like that, even though, hell, the world runs on conspiracies. Let's get real. But I am saying that it's getting people to take attention away from the fact that this very well could have been a cyber attack. Now, I've been consulting through email with an expert with respect to, and this guy's a former pipeline CEO, engineer, top tier, knows his stuff. I'm not going to read the entire email because it'll probably put you to sleep. But if you want to, I could. Now, he suspects that it wasn't caused by overpressure via cyber attack. However, there are these pigs that get sent down the pipeline to clean it out. He thinks it might have been rigged with an explosion. So this could have been done internally. So my question to him was, well, where is the input for the pigs? He says that the input for the pigs typically is going to be at the mouth of the pipeline, basically in Russia. However, there are other places where you can insert this pig, this cleaning agent that goes through and gets all the gunk and the corrosion out to make the pipeline flow smoothly. So that's one possible explanation, is that this could have been done internally. It could be done via cyber, even though he doesn't think that the pressures required could be necessarily achieved, or at least there was no indication prior to the explosion, although I don't know how he has that information. I'm sure this guy is very smart. By the sounds of this email, he knows exactly what he's talking about. But it's not ruling it out. It's possible that this could have been done by taking control of the motherboard and saying, hey, let's pressurize. And that is where the burst happened for whatever reason. Now, it was done on 2 pipelines. So unless they're running on the same circuit, I don't know if they had a couple 0 days and they were saving them for that one particular moment, and it happened, and this explosion, which in the past was a 3-kiloton explosion, easily would have triggered a seismic of, 2.1 on the Richter scale, 1.9, something like that. So it's within the realm of possibility that this explosion was not caused by a bomb, but by cyber. Now, he suspects it could have been caused internally via a pig or sending something down the pipeline. Of course, that would immediately implicate the Russians. Well, why would the Russians want to do it? I'm not saying they're doing it. I know Tucker Carlson, Joe Biden said blah, blah, blah. I watch all the independent media news, alternative stuff. Everybody's singing the same song today, which makes me think, hold on, not to be contrarian, but just to think, hold on for a second now. Maybe there's something more to this, okay? Because the Russians, it's not like they're coming out guns blazing and saying, hey, why did you do this? And it was the USA. It's not like they're, you'd think they would be a bit more vocal, because I don't even think they know maybe yet, or they know and there was something else to it, but you think they would be a little bit more aggressive in their condemnation of it. even though they've been, they're typically quite measured, quite reserved when it comes to these kind of things. They're not overly sensational in the things that they say. So it's very possible that, one, it could have been done by that. Now, of course, it could have been done at the bottom of the sea by, special ops guys, Spetsnaz guys. That could have been done. Why? Okay, the question about the Russians, why would the Russians want to do it? Well, I've heard things about the fact that, Gazprom has these multinational contracts with these multinational companies that extend beyond the borders of anywhere. Okay, they're not, they have no allegiance to any specific country. These contracts still need to be honored. So in order to get out of these contracts, Gazprom says, I guess it's been exploded. We can't run the pipeline anymore. We can't honor the contract, so it's a way out of the contract. My only thing with that is that obviously that would get them out of that contract. But the idea is that if you didn't honor these contracts, nobody would want to do business with you ever again. Obviously, they would have their own investigative teams to know that the Russians did this themselves if that was the case, which would mean that people wouldn't want to do business with them anyways. I'm not sure if that makes sense to people, but I'm not really buying that whole thing, but I'm not ruling it out. It's one thing to just to entertain an idea, but don't rule it out, because we don't know what the true motive of this is yet. Okay? It makes very little sense for Russia. I know they could just turn off the gas. I get it. I understand that. There could be something to this multinational contract thing with all the other companies. But again, now it's a $10 billion paperweight sitting at the bottom of the ocean, starting to corrode. And it may well just be swallowed up by the ocean. And that's a massive investment in time, resources, manpower, now just for nothing. So this is big. This means that basically the only pipelines that remain are the Naftogaz pipelines that are running through Ukraine, and those could potentially be turned off. 30% of the natural gas that flows through Europe flows through there. If that gets shut off, then it's going to be a long, long, cold winter. It's already going to be a long, dark, cold winter. There's no doubt about that. After once those pipelines are gone, the only other pipeline is one that runs to Turkey, I believe. So, the energy needs, the energy war is definitely ramping up. Now, what else should we talk about today? That's my kind of theory with respect to all of that stuff. We just simply don't have enough information yet, but nobody is talking about the cyber threat. Nobody is talking about the fact that this exact thing was done in the 80s. Now we're more interconnected than ever before. I'm going to presume that there are stopgaps in place, or air gaps, so that Nord Stream and Gazprom can't have their stuff hacked. Mind you, there's so many countries involved in that it's very difficult to say, who has access and who doesn't. The CIA apparently warned of attacks prior to this, which of course would be a usual thing that somebody would do. They would try to absolve themselves of responsibility, say that, hey, this might be coming, so therefore when it does come, or when they effectively do it, they can say, oh, look at that, right? And then to get everybody focused on looking at, well, was it undersea divers, was it bombs, when really all along it was a hack. They'll be able to determine whether the explosion came internally or externally, depending on the direction of the explosive jagged edges of the pipe, right? If it's pointing out that way, that means that the explosion came from inside. If it's going inwards, or collapsed into itself, then that means that it was an explosion from the outside. So lots of plausible deniability here. I don't know if they're ever going to be able to figure it out. I'm sure they're going to find fragments of stuff and maybe be able to do some forensic analysis that gets us somewhere, but it's unknown. Regardless, it's a very large hole. The pictures don't do it justice. Apparently, this is a kilometer long of just natural gas bubbles bubbling up. And of course, this is an environmental catastrophe, as Tucker Carlson did accurately indicate. which is not getting a lot of attention. Natural gas is effectively methane, which is a major contributor to the global warming. I said the word. I'm going to get a bunch of trolls. The greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is a thing. That's why when you're sitting in your car in the hot sun with all the windows closed, it gets hotter than the outside. It's simple. Simple science. Okay. Referendums. Yeah, the referendums came in 99.9%, whatever. Doesn't matter. We all knew that was going to happen. The key question is, what happens next? Apparently, there's been some repositioning of nuclear bombers by the Russians. Now, you see, guys, we're going to be interviewing, we did interview David Pine. That interview is going to be released later today because it's so urgent that we get this information out there. David Pine is a former associate of Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, the late, great, I would say, Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, whose predictions are coming true to a T. And what the strategic forces of both the United States and Russians tend to do is telegraph things, because they want the United States to see what they're doing by a satellite. So they move this bomber to Kaliningrad or to the border close to Finland or something like. They do that as a head fake. That's not what's really going on. If they're taking out their mobile ICBM platforms, they're probably doing that at night. They're doing it, they're moving them, or they want the United States to see that they're moving them so that they know that this is getting serious, right? It's whole part of the escalation process is letting them know that, hey, we're moving our stuff, so you better back off. This is what they've been doing. There was also ships, several warships spotted off the coast of Alaska, not off the coast, 75 miles. It was in international waters, so it was legal. It was in accordance with international law that these warships were there. But again, the Chinese and the Russians were doing a joint exercise, and they wanted the Americans to see that. They want the Americans to know that when World War III happens, they are going to fully support one another. My friends, it is getting really, really scary. I'm telling you, not like, oh, I'm going to die in World War III. No, but it's getting real. You know, there's a very high likelihood that not only are the Russians getting drafted, but that we will get drafted at some point. That would be a great way for Trudeau to get at the opposition, wouldn't it? For us to be drafted into a major war. Now, in terms of the Russian conscription thing and going over the borders, I guess my question would be for people who are fleeing the country is you need to think long game. Right now, you should know that the Americans are saying every Russian or dual Russian-American citizen should return home to the United States. I think it was Blinken who issued that warning. They're calling back everybody from Russia. This is a very bad sign. This is exactly the same thing that happened before the invasion of Ukraine. It's important to recognize that if you are fleeing to surrounding countries to avoid the draft, for starters, as far as I know, and I could be wrong about this because I don't know, I don't have all the information on the ground. Some people are saying they're just willy-nilly, randomly banging on doors, pulling anybody they can get. Other people are saying, no, it's only people who've been through the conscription program, because if you didn't know, Russia has a conscription program in which they put, I believe it's like 100 to 130,000 young males through every single year, and those are the people who get drawn for the draft. As far as I know, those are considered the reserve forces because they're trained in the military, and then of course they have to have those. But the actual conscription, I think that could be beyond that. So the actual conscription is above and beyond, but these people who are being drafted are from the reserves to go and fight. Now, I don't have all the details on that, but I know they have a reserve pool of like 25 to 30 million guys. Some of these may have went through the program like 30 years ago, which is why you're seeing older guys being drafted, and who knows what their role is going to be. There's a lot of auxiliary roles within the military that aren't just fighting on the front lines. I mean, it's probably, you know, one guy on the front lines for every 4 guys in the rear doing other stuff. So it's hard to say. But I think that these people might come to find that if the war gets really bad, they may not be so welcomed in these countries. I worry about the Russophobia getting out of control. and people potentially, being rounded up. I know, it could go the other way too. There could be some rainbow campaign to, bring in all the people and convert them to a Western way of thinking, or whatever we want to call it. But here's the other thing. What a lot of these guys are going to realize is they're going to jump ship and they're going to try to get into Europe, and they're going to realize, holy shit, the price of gasoline, the price of energy, the price of food, everything is way higher than it was back home, and I'm being shunned by half of the population. That is something you got to factor in to the calculus of draft dodging at times like these. Now, I'm not discouraging or encouraging or anything like that. I'm just saying there are going to be consequences. And then, of course, if you try to go back to the country afterwards, you will be shunned by the country. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. Look, nobody wants to be drafted to go to war unless you're, super patriotic and you perhaps see the socio-historical progression of events that led to this eventuality that we are in right now, and you are very proud of your country and you want to defend it because you believe this is a matter of national security. Then, of course, you have your motivations. But most people aren't going to feel that way. Now, it's quite possible that the people who are leaving, the reasons why the Russians aren't stopping them is because they simply don't want them there. Because those are people who would likely stir up unrest within the country. If you're, think about it, if you have the zeal to flee a country to avoid a draft, chances are if you stayed, you would be a liability in some way. So maybe that's why the Russian government is allowing people to leave. Now, there's only a few ways out of the country right now, to the best of my knowledge. I could be wrong about this, but I know a lot of the border countries have closed their borders. So it could be that what we're seeing with these bottlenecks is all of that traffic that would have went through those countries being rerouted to places like Finland, what is the other one called? Ossetia, Georgia, wherever. These are countries that are still have their borders open. So, things are just not as they seem. It's incredible to me that we live in this day and age where, information superhighway is so vast and so in-depth, and we have so much information and data points, yet we can't get one single accurate figure out of this conflict. I mean, World War II, you can go back and you can say, okay, 20 million, 50, you can make an estimation. But now, nobody knows. Yet, we should, in theory at least, know. But the problem is that the weapons of the info war, I hate to use that term. Do I have to pay royalties for that, Alex? I don't know. But it's incredible to me that the thing that was supposed to empower us to know more about and to dissipate the fog of war is actually convoluting it more with misinformation and disinformation. It's absolutely astonishing. One day after Germany had a protest to open this pipeline, it was exploded. So somebody wanted it. Like I say, I'm leaning towards Western countries being at fault for this, but you never know. Guys, you never know. Remember, 4D chess. We got to think 4D chess, okay? Like I said, for people who are dodging the draft, you're likely going to come to find that there's more chaos in Europe, potentially, than there is in Russia. It's just more veiled, okay? You're just working two jobs to just get by, as opposed to, maybe not having McDonald's and Gucci in your country. But what is likely going to happen, and it already looks like, and I called this before, I said you're going to see the rise of populist movements within Europe. Now, people are going to take this as, oh, this is a great thing. Now we're fighting back, and now maybe, there's going to be some common sense applied, and we're going to, but just be careful, because just remember what happened in WW2. It could very well, what you think is the cure, become the new virus, okay? It could flip, and the pendulum could flip the other way. That's why even keeled people like myself always say, hold on a minute, just wait, just slow down a minute. Okay, I get it. I get that we need, a strong, decisive leader to counteract the nonsense that's run amok. But be careful. Just be careful. What could possibly happen right now? NATO gets destabilized totally. Europe breaks apart. The European Union breaks apart. It fractures. And now, where the hell is Article 5? Russia sweeps through the Baltic states one by one, slowly accumulating influence. It's not going to happen overnight. Did Ukraine happen overnight? Absolutely not. We're talking months, years. Okay, this is a long game. This is all about strategy. Too many people are focused on the battles, like these people who spend the better part of the day looking at tanks being blown up. That's not the battle. That's not the war. That's the battle. Okay, that's tactics. The actual strategy includes so much more. It's a culture war. It's an economic war. It's a political war. It's much broader in its context. So you need to keep this all in mind. What else do we need to talk about today? The drought in China is still kicking their butts. It is going to continue to put increased pressure on food prices. We are right now having rising gas prices here again. I think the price of gas has gone up about 17% in the past couple weeks, almost immediately after the Russian mobilization declaration. The price of gas went up. Of course, the markets crashed. I don't know what the markets are doing today. And the price of eggs are at a record high. It's important to keep in mind, too, that remember this. When you're out there shopping and you're seeing these crazy food prices, the U.S. dollar is it's getting to the point where it's very, very high relative to other currencies. So you have to also factor that in, is that if the petrodollar plunges, not only are that's being priced in U.S. dollars, all those high costs that you see at the grocery store, priced in U.S. dollars. Well, just think about if your U.S. dollar is the strongest currency and is strong and the prices are still that high, the prices should be lower. Okay, if you have one of the best currencies in the world and the price of milk is $2, what happens when that dollar loses its purchasing power, which it inevitably will? People are just flocking to it right now because they have no other choice. And we're on the brink of a global fracturing, decoupling, going into a multipolar economic world. What happens when it loses its value? Guess what? That price of milk is going to increase correspondingly. I don't worry about the price of gold anymore. I've realized, and this does not get enough airplay, anybody who is saying buy gold because the price is going to go up does not understand it. You do not look at the price of gold and precious metals when you buy it at all. It doesn't matter because it's merely a reflection of the value of the currency that it's measured in. So if gold is very low one day, that must mean if it's measured in US dollars, the strength of the US dollar is strong. You will see a corresponding dip. It's almost a one-to-one relationship with some exceptions due to market fluctuations and supply and demand issues with respect to mining and stuff. But you will see a one-to-one relationship almost. When the US dollar gets stronger, the price of gold goes down because that's what gold is measured in. Watch if the US dollar tanks. If you see the price of gold go to $10,000, you're not that much richer. No, the gold you have has retained the same value it has always held throughout history, human history. It will buy you the same thing today as it did in the Roman era. What else do we got to talk about here? I'm sure we're going to miss something. David Pine is coming on the channel. Did I mention that? He's going to be on later today, protege of the late, great Peter Pry. So watch that video. We're going to break it into two parts. One is a bit more time dependent. It's to do with the referendums, what the outcomes would be. And the other one is about the nuclear capabilities of Russia and China, going into greater depth with respect to their subterranean facilities that they have in order to obviously protect their population from a nuclear war. Remember that the United States doesn't think or is not postured or prepared to win a nuclear war, whereas the Eastern nations actually believe they can win a nuclear war. And one more thing to keep in mind, guys, with respect, when you're seeing these numbers, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, you're talking about nations that are willing to sacrifice millions of men in order to continue in their lineage. You're talking about countries who've, throughout World War II, lost tens of millions of people. So the hundreds of thousands, as valuable as human life as me and you might view it, that's a drop in the bucket. That's why Putin said we're only getting started with respect to this conflict. So I'm telling you, I know a lot of people want to, there's definitely a benefit if you're on the side of NATO and Ukraine and stuff. Like, there's a benefit in keeping morale high by focusing on the victories and not focusing on the negatives. Because look, when you're in a gunfight, you don't want to be the guy who's just fixated on all the bad news. I mean, if it came down to an actual tactical scenario, you wouldn't see me focusing on all of the deficiencies in what we had. We'd be focused on what can we do in order to get out of that situation. You have to be solution focused on a tactical level, but it's good to be a bit more cautious on a strategic level, because that's where the war is won. It's on the strategic level, not on the tactical level. I'm sure that there's tons more information that I missed today. I got a stack of papers this long. Oh man, what do we got going on here? I talk about gas prices. Vancouver in Western Canada, I'm pretty sure most of you know where Vancouver is poised to set a new record gas price. They're at $2.33 right now. We're at $1.75 here. What else do we have to talk about today? I think I might just end the video there. I think we kind of briefly touched on each of these things. The hurricane, I think it was tilting a bit southward. I think it's maybe good for Tampa. I don't know the exact trajectory of where that thing is going, but as usual, it's not looking good. Guys, if you want more of our wholesome family content or just survival gear related content, go and watch our library of videos that we've done over the years. Literally hundreds of videos like that. So as much as I really love the 99% of very, very positive comments that we receive, especially when it's a video with my kids in it. You know, I don't care if the trolls come at me when I'm in it, but you know, when you come after a video with my kids, that's just really, really low, regardless of who it is or what I'm saying. Just don't go after the kids, right? But if you want content like that, there's lots of content. We've been doing that stuff for years, the practical stuff. See, the thing is that we've been preparing for SHTF for many, many years, and here we are. This is it. You might not think that this is it because the floodwaters haven't encroached through your door yet, but it will happen eventually. And at that time, the time for prepping is over. I'm not saying stop in your preparedness. I'm not saying stop developing new skills and just sit there and watch videos like this. No, these videos are for people who are already prepared and who are trying to figure out and cut through the fog of war. Because at this point in time, that is one of the hardest, most difficult things, is just getting a straight answer. Because there's just too many competing interests. And unfortunately, the same weapons that empower us in the information age are used against us. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoy the video, Canadian Prepper out.